Hi guys, I'm sorry for this trouble. I'm gonna try connecting doctor again. I was not able to connect earlier. Okay. Thank you for joining the third time, doctor.
Okay.
Okay, we are back. Now it looks clearer actually. Earlier it was
Yes.
quite blurry as well.
So hopefully we'll see how long this goes.
Oh, okay. Okay, never mind. Okay, so guys, once again, I want to request you all, if you could not answer your questions earlier, please write on again and we'll try to answer all of them. So, doctor, there's one more question which I want to ask you since many people talk about this, is the cognitive dysfunction.
hmm
So, what do you think is cognitive dysfunction, which is a part of MS? Is it also because somewhere immunity is not in control, or can immune system play a big role in
Yeah.
that?
So the big thing really is the fact that we know sort of at the heart of all autoimmune diseases is there's a target tissue. And in MS, it's the target tissue is it's the nervous system. So, most people think of the spinal cord, but also, obviously lesions in the brain. And then sensory tissue can be affected, and even autonomic. So that part of the nervous system that we don't necessarily think about, right? That can control like our digestion and our heart rate and things like that. So, it depends on the person and how they're affected. But at the heart is that we're attacking nervous tissue and brain tissue. So anytime, even if you didn't have MS, even if you had, say you had a toxin like in your body, like mercury or something, which is a neurotoxin. Um, Anytime that we have any inflammation in the brain, we're going to get the side effects of brain fog, or what we call brain fog, right? So that can include foggy thinking, confusion, slow thinking, um, really anything. For some people, it might be sort of a low level depression. There's lots of different symptoms that you can have from that. And it really comes from the inflammation that's occurring in the brain itself. So you want to try to minimize, of course, we know that a lot of the problem comes from gut issues. And, if you have problems with gut permeability, you're going to have more and more problems with flare-ups of whatever disease it is that you have. And so people will say when they're, obviously when their MS is flaring, that they might feel more foggy or have more cognitive issues. So
Yes.
it is a true issue. It is a true problem. So, again, working on trying to minimize any toxin exposure, getting enough sleep is a big one,
Mm,
because that's how
absolutely.
our brain actually sort of like recycles its cells
Yeah.
and sort of takes out the trash and detoxifies while we sleep. And
Mhm.
we know how we feel. Even a person who doesn't have MS, if they don't sleep, they can't, they're cognitively, they can't function. So,
Absolutely. So, how many hours sleep do you recommend ideally for any person to take?
so ideally, I would say definitely 7.5 hours or more. Some people can do okay on 7, but we really try to tell people to aim towards more than 8. And then you might be able to, you may not be asleep the whole time, but at least you're in bed, relaxing. And if you can get 8 hours, that's great. Yeah.
So I'm seeing a question again by Vici Waters, and she's written, can you go over the vegan diet again?
Mhm.
Um, just to, can we just say something to wrap up this?
Yeah,
Since
sure.
there was a disconnect and probably we must have not heard.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, I think vegan diets can be really helpful. I mean, they can be, but you just have to be careful about making sure that you're getting all the nutrients. So a lot of people don't, they might eat the same thing every day, or they may not be looking to see where are they getting their fiber and their protein from, and they could be eating maybe excessive amounts of fruit, or excessive amounts of grains, or excessive amounts of sugar or processed
Mm,
foods, and that's not a good vegan diet, right? So because you're not eating animal proteins or eggs or anything, you want to make sure that you're getting enough like legumes, that you're getting enough plant sources of protein and things like that. You're getting enough fiber and you're not getting too much sugar, which can be very pro-inflammatory. So I think it's a great thing to experiment with, but I would say, you want to pay a lot of attention, write down what you're eating, look at the nutritional value of what you're eating, mix it up, maybe work with the nutritionist. It just takes a little bit more work. But the nice thing is that you're getting lots and lots of vegetables, which is what everybody should be getting a lot of. Yeah.
Thank you, doctor. I have a question by Jalen, and he's written, can MS cause loss of sensation?
Yeah, it can, for sure. Especially
Yes.
if you have sensory nerve involvement or peripheral nerve involvement. And even many people have probably experienced difficulty walking, even what's called proprioception, balance issues. So there can be loss, and sometimes it's permanent, and sometimes it's just transient. For some people, when they're having a flare up, they may have changes in sensation, of course, numbness, tingling, all of those things. That's a really, really common presentation. In fact, that's probably one of the earliest presentations people have is sensory problems. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, so you're right. So most of the people, they have either optic neuritis or this kind of problem as their first symptoms of MS.
Right. Visual
Right.
problems for sure. Yeah.
Yes. That's the other question by Racing, and he's written, does state of mind, happy, sad, or stress, also affects one's immunity?
Yes, it does. So, there's research into this idea of positive thinking, that, you can't necessarily always control your mood, but you can control your thoughts. So if
Right.
you can change your thought patterns, even when something bad is happening to you, if you can change your thought pattern, you can actually, it's more of like a reflection on the mood, like the emotion that you're having. And
Right.
by changing your thought patterns, you can actually then change your mood, and you can change the physical response that it has in your body. And there's been a lot of work in gratitude work. So people who spend time every day being grateful for what is in their life versus looking at all the negative stuff. Um, and we do know that people who do more gratitude work and have a more positive outlook on life tend to have stronger immunity. They tend to get over things faster. They tend to not get as sick as frequently. So yeah, it's, the power of positive thinking is very, very valid.
Absolutely. We say it always that you have to always think positively and never go on the negative direction. Always look
Mhm.
at the brighter side of the thing.
Yep.
Never
Be an
look
optimist.
at something which will cause you stress.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
So,
I have the other question by A. Malik, and okay, he's written about a DMT known as rituximab. So I can tell you that I recently had a question put up on the story, and we have already answered this. So if you just message me separately, I can be able to share the results with you of the views of everyone. Okay. So doctor, I want to ask you, this is very important question about vitamin D. Since we
mhm.
say that people with MS have deficiency in vitamin D, but we're also seeing that people without MS also have deficiencies nowadays.
Yes.
So, what role does vitamin D play in our body, and what people should do to take care of it?
Yeah. So vitamin D is, a lot of people call it a vitamin, but it's actually more of a hormone, meaning that when we create it in the body, because we create it, or if we eat it, obviously, um, it acts as a modulator of immunity. So it can actually do a lot of different things. So it migrates to our cells, and it can turn on and off genes that make proteins that
Mhm.
regulate our immune system. And so that's the way it's really more of a hormone rather than a vitamin. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's a pretty fascinating thing, and it does a lot of different things. I mean, it's sort of like zinc, right? Zinc has a million things that it does, and vitamin D does as well. So one of the things that we know about vitamin D is that it helps regulate calcium absorption in the body, and that's why it's so important for that. But we know that it helps with making our, sort of changing how our T cells work in the body. So that's one of sort of the impacts that vitamin D has on autoimmunity. So it helps preserve some of that tolerance that we have against our own tissue. It's also very anti-inflammatory. So it can sort of calm down excess inflammation that maybe is non-purposeful. So those are like one of the two big things, and it does a lot of other things too. But yeah, they started seeing a link between vitamin D deficiency and MS years and years ago, and that's why they thought that people in more northern hemispheres had higher incidence of MS, and that's still true. But they don't know if it's 100% due to vitamin D. Because certainly there are people who have low vitamin D that never get MS, right? And then there's people with MS who might not have low vitamin D, but there is a huge correlation. And so I always recommend that you definitely get tested. It's an easy test to get, and that that people supplement, because we really want to have higher than normal, like what we would recommend as being okay levels of vitamin D. You want it to be higher than that in order to act as a protection for MS. And also, of course, we talked about this about COVID, that it's recommended for everyone really, but for people who have COVID to have more vitamin D, because it seems to also be protective there too.
Yes, speaking about COVID, I remember when COVID actually came and everybody was running to buy vitamin C.
Vitamin C. Yeah, you couldn't get vitamin C or zinc. It was all
Yeah,
sold out everywhere.
I was out of stock, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I can see a question by Jana, and she's written, I'm having a prefrontal cortex flare. What can I plan to experience on my birthday a few days ago? I had little nervous breakdown and I just need to understand why could that be MS? Can the prefrontal cortex flare be MS?
Hard to say, but the prefrontal cortex is part of the brain, right? So it's literally up here. And the prefrontal cortex has a very strong role in what we call like upper level thinking, right? Or executive thinking or executive power. So it's what helps us behave normally and also be able to organize thoughts. So usually when people have a problem with their prefrontal cortex, they may be like uninhibited. They may not be able to regulate their behavior as well. So I suppose that, we don't normally think of MS as being a disease that targets the prefrontal cortex more than other areas of the brain. But I suppose if that's where they've seen activity, that there can be, changes in behavior. I don't think that you would do anything differently than what you would do for any other, flare up. So I guess you would look at maybe things that maybe had happened before. Was there excess stress, or was there something that someone ate, or did they go through, did they have a lot of stress in their body? Did they skip a bunch of nights of sleep? What could have been a trigger that caused the flare up to begin with? Did they get sick? Yeah.
Okay. I can see on the question by what does MS look like? And he's written that I can't feel how hot my shower is, so I turn it up so I can feel it. Am I doing more damage by having a hot shower?
Well, potentially, yes. Because if you've lost sensation, it doesn't mean that the hot water is not scalding your skin. So my recommendation, if there's nowhere on the body that you can, like, if you can't feel it in your hands or your feet, that I would use maybe some sort of temperature gauge. So whether it's a thermometer, probably you'd have to use something that you would use for cooking, right? Because you want to make sure that you can go high enough. So maybe like a baking thermometer, because you certainly don't want to be scalding your skin, because yes, you can scald your skin for sure.
Yeah. So I have something to add to this. So I remember a few years back, I had this same kind of sensation. I was not able to feel any. I could not even feel water on my body. It was like
Mm,
I'd lost sensation. And
yeah.
yes, the first thing I could think of was going to my neurologist. So he checked me clinically, and he found out that few parts of my body had sensations and some part of my body did not. And
Hmm.
then, of course, the MRI, and it was concluded that I had a flare up.
Hmm.
So such things can also happen. So
Yeah.
I always recommend that go to your neurologist and let him check you clinically once. And
Hmm.
see, maybe they have to have medicines to prescribe or something to treat the flare up. So,
Yeah. You
yeah.
shouldn't just be turning up the water. That's dangerous.
Yes. Okay. I have the other question by Sanajay, and she's written, I had a sudden seizure attack when I am not epileptical. So the hospital put me on tablets. Can I stop taking them? It's making me tired and feel like committing suicide. Please help.
Mm. That is something you have to talk to your neurologist about. I don't know what the tablets are, and I would never tell people to stop their medication without being, seen by their specialist. So, but if you're having severe side effects, I would definitely get that addressed very quickly, for sure.
Absolutely. Please contact your neurologist ASAP.
Yes.
Um, Also, can I take coffee or is that a no?
In general, for people to drink coffee,
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily a no. Some people tolerate coffee very well. I would say any excess is not good because it can actually increase your adrenaline and cortisol levels. It can also
Mm-hmm.
interfere with sleep. But
Yes.
there are some actually brain diseases, for example, some patients with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease actually do well on like a cup of coffee a day because there are some good beneficial parts of caffeine that actually can be brain protective.
Okay. Okay. I have the other question popping on the screen, and this is there anything I can eat in order to repair my myelin?
I wouldn't say there's anything that you can do eating wise, but what you want to do is stop the inflammatory process. And so, what I always recommend is work with someone, maybe a nutritionist, to make sure that you're getting all the nutrients that you need, and also make sure that you don't have maybe sensitivities to food that could be exacerbating your illness. And then the other thing is some people don't have, we talked about this, but have enough fiber or don't have a good healthy bacteria
Yes.
in their guts. And that's something that you can work on with prebiotic fibers and also probiotic bacteria. Fermented foods can be helpful too, because in the end, that's what's going to help your myelin repair is that if you have less, autoimmune activity towards it.
Absolutely. Okay, I have this follow-up question by Jana, and she has written that can my new Dexita prescription help with my prefrontal cortex flare?
I don't know the answer to that question. Again, you'd have to talk to whoever
Yeah,
prescribed it for you to see whether or not that's a side effect. Because that's a pretty rare, um, I would say it's a rather rare side effect, but it might be specific to the drug. So I would talk to them about it.
okay, that is one question which I want to ask, and this is a very common problem that people with MS do, face, which is about migraines and headaches. So,
Mm.
do you think that migraines and a headache can be, controlled if you have good eating habits and you have a good immune system? Does that also play a role in that?
Yeah, so I would say the good eating habits for sure. And there are some people with migraine who tend to react to certain foods. Um, a lot of times, well, for example, coffee is one of them, right? So caffeine for some people actually triggers a migraine. Moldy food or like, for example, some fermented cheeses can bother people. Alcohol is a big one. Anything that has yeast in it. So certain things can definitely trigger migraine. So I would be careful to even preservatives in food, chemicals can do it, artificial colors can do it, sulfites that are used to preserve like dried fruits, wine, all those things can cause migraine flares. So there are examples that you can find of that are sort of like low migraine diets or foods like lists on the internet. So I always recommend maybe trying that for a month and seeing if you notice a difference with the frequency of migraines.
All right. And doctor, we have been talking for close to an hour now. I think I'm going to take the last few questions.
Great.
I can see two questions here on the screen. First is by Coco Romt, and it's written, in conventional medicine, it is assumed that multiple sclerosis is caused by degradation of the myelin sheath. Is that true?
Well, definitely there's degradation of the myelin sheath. I think there's other, but in terms of what triggers it, was that the question or?
I
The first part
think
of the
it's a
question?
statement. Yeah.
Let me see if
Okay.
I can
Okay.
find it. It is assumed,
No,
okay,
and it's just a statement. Yeah.
it's
Okay.
assumed. Well, I don't think
Yeah.
it's assumed. I think they know that it's caused a lot of the cases. It's the myelin sheath that's being destroyed. But then you also have, obviously in the brain, you have what's called, white matter issues. And the myelin covers pretty much all nerves. So I think that for the most part, most of the research has been focusing on that as being the problem. But I do think there's probably some inflammation on other areas, not just myelin. But generally that is the driving factor, is anti-myelin, sort of antibodies that we see. But I think that MS is turning out to be a very, it's not just one disease process. As you know, some people have very different presentations. Some people relapse, remit. Some people do very well. Some people are very mild. Some people are much more severe. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah.
Okay, I'm taking the last question here, which is by Mail Louis. And she's written, I always get headaches, bad migraine on the right side, and it feels like it's getting worse every time. What can I do? You've already answered this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say start with triggers, right? Because migraines
Yes.
tend to be triggers, and sometimes it's even hormonal triggers. So that's another thing, especially with women. Migraines much more common in women because of estrogen. So a lot of times it's fluctuations there. There can be things like, it's definitely triggered by changes in sleep patterns. So even sometimes getting more sleep, so trying to stay like really consistent with sleep, over exercising, really any sort of radical changes, excess stress, skipping meals, so blood sugar problems. So people who might
Yes.
skip meals sometimes might find that they have a migraine flare. So sort of looking into keeping like a diary as to when you get headaches, like what changed around that time, and it'll probably help you hone in on what's going on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Doctor, for all your time and for the great
Sure, thank
advices you've
you.
given us today. It was a wonderful session, and I'm sorry for all the glitches that happened today.
No, it just happens, right? I don't know. It's just technology.
Yeah, so we have to prepare for such things all the time.
That's right.
But
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for your time, and I know you accepted this request at a very short notice. So thank you very much once again.
It was a pleasure. Have a great rest of the day.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Okay, guys, I'm really sorry once again for all the glitches that happened today. We had joined for the third time. But yes, like Doctor said, it's the technology. You can't help it. Well, thank you so much for joining us again for 3 times in a row and being with us. And we'll meet you again next week and with other doctor of other specialty. And till then, bye-bye. Have a great week. Thank you.